So, good morning. Good morning. It is good to see so many of you. And hello, Zoom. I wasn't sure how many people will be able to be here today because of the 4th of July. I hope that you did get some time to spend with your family and with friends and get to enjoy this beautiful, hot weather that we're having. I was in Norman, Oklahoma with my daughter to celebrate the 4th. And most of you know that I grew up in Oklahoma. And there's nothing quite like going home, right? Everything is familiar. The food, the smells. I have decades of memories in that place. My family will tell you that I tell way too many stories as we drive up and down the road. As we pass Brahms, the ice cream shop, I seem to always say, that was my first job. I started there like at 15. And if I don't tell that story, I tell about the really big bike accident that I had trying to get to that job. But I'm just filled with memories. As we drive past Mrs. Carson's house, I remember how she used to bake cookies for her granddaughter Stephanie and me. And I look at the sunset, and it just feels like my sky. Going home is special. It just makes you breathe better. And in today's gospel, Jesus went home. And I wonder what it was like for him. How it must have felt for him to go home to Nazareth. I'm not sure how long he had been gone, right? The text doesn't tell us. But it makes it sound like it had probably been some time. He had been teaching across the region. He had gathered his disciples. He was traveling to different towns doing miracles. He turned water into wine. He healed people of blindness, healed people of leprosy, fed thousands. By all accounts, he had been pretty busy. And now he was going home. And I wonder if he was just hoping to get a little bit of rest, a little bit of breathe. Or was he just excited to get back home and to do the things that he had done in other places, right? To teach people, to heal the sick, and to spend time with everyone. And there's something really special about being able to make a difference in your hometown. But the writer of the Gospel of Mark tells us in today's Gospel that once Jesus gets to Nazareth, he starts to teach, and the people are amazed, and they're surprised by how wise Jesus is. They remember Jesus as a little boy. They know his mother, and they know his father. Mark tells us that the people of Nazareth, they get mad, and they rejected Jesus. They didn't want to see him as more than what they knew him as a little boy. Jesus said that a prophet is rejected in his hometown. And then we're told this really curious thing. We're told that Jesus was not able to do miracles in Nazareth. And that doesn't make any sense. I mean, how can Jesus not be able to do miracles? I mean, he's God, right? Yes. But miracles are not magic shows. Miracles are always about one thing: bringing people back into community. Jesus does not heal the blind man so that he can see, or only so that he can see. He heals the blind man so that he can rejoin community. Because of the different laws and the different customs of the time, the people who were sick or who were considered unclean were cut off from the community. They had to live in a designated space outside of the common area, and they're physically separated from the other people. They're not allowed in the temple to worship, so they don't have any part of religious life. Being sick or unclean, it also carried a social stigma, which meant that people felt justified in excluding you. So when people were healed, so much changed in their lives beyond just their physical health. They were reintegrated back into communal and religious life. Miracles were about transforming social connection and inclusion. Unfortunately, once the people of Nazareth turned against Jesus, his ability to bring inclusion for others was lost. He could not create social connection and reduce stigma when, as the text said, the people took offense at him. Even if he would have healed people, it's hard to imagine that those people could have been reintegrated into community. The miracles would have just been a spectacle to prove that he could do miracles. And the people he healed would have more likely become a circus oddity and not part of the community. And that is actually the opposite of the point. And this must have broken Jesus' heart. I mean, these people were just hurting themselves. And Jesus had a choice. He could have just left Nazareth. I mean, it would have served him right. But he doesn't do that. He's called his 12 disciples together, and he commissions them to go out and heal. And I don't know what Jesus was thinking, but maybe he thought something like, fine, you don't want me to heal people? No problem. But how about instead of just me, now you have 12 people who are going out and healing people? It's a lot of people to reintegrate back into a community. It's hard to imagine that Jesus didn't feel hurt by the rejection of his people. But instead of sulking or just moving on, he found a way to transform the lives of even more people. And being a part of a community and building community is really the heart of the gospel. And it is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Things like miracles and forgiveness of sin, eating with sinners, they were all about bringing people back into communal life and to create a sense of belonging. As Jesus followers, we always have to ask ourselves, where am I seeking community and where am I creating community? I want to tell a story about a man named Richard. So Richard had been homeless for 12 years, living in tents and under cardboard in the streets of Seattle. And a couple of years ago, Richard showed up at a tiny home village where homeless people can find transitional housing. He was given a key to his tiny home, an 8-by-10 building with a bed and a dresser. He stood in the doorway, gripping the key, and just staring at his bed. He crawled into his bed and he pulled up the covers. And the first night, he did not sleep. He just listened to the rain. It was so beautiful hitting the roof of his tiny home. It was the first time in 12 years that he heard rain and did not get wet. Over the next couple of days, he started to acclimate to his new surroundings. There was food to eat. It took some practice to only take what he needed and to trust that there would be more food the next day. He began to participate in village governance. They had weekly meetings to talk about the community rules and the duties. One rule was, we talk for each other and not about each other. And this is because they knew that gossip will kill any community. He joined the security team and would take nightly walks around the village to make sure that everyone was okay. The walk was always the same. He would check the gate to make sure that it was secure. He would look at the key log to see if anybody else needed keys, and if they did, he would make them. And then he would walk his route. He would say hi to Sam, who sat on the blue stoop. He would always stop and talk to Sam a bit before he would move on. And a couple of doors down, there was Tanya. Tanya had cancer, and everyone knew Tanya. Richard would knock on her door each night to see how she was doing. Did she get to her appointment that day? Did she have her medications? Did she need anything? The people of the village, they made sure that Tanya had what she needed. The people with cars drove her to her appointments. People would bring her her meals. People checked on her. And Richard knew this, but he always checked just to make sure. And if she would have been on the streets, there's no doubt that she would have died. But here, in this small village and in this small community, she survived. She eventually moved into permanent housing and is now thriving. Richard's nights went on like this for the time that he lived in the tiny village. And after about 6 weeks in the village, he was thinking about the people he knew. David had a job and just bought a car. Wasn't a new car, but it got him to and from his job. And then Lance was getting a 4-year degree at one of the local community colleges. And there was Debbie. She just got her certification for long-haul truck driving. And Richard thought to himself, David isn't a harder worker than I am, and Lance isn't really smarter than I am. And if Debbie can do it, why can't I? And so he went to his case manager's office and said, I want to be a welder. Can I get certified for that? And the case manager said, well, yeah. And so he did. He became a welder, and he moved into permanent housing. Richard has a family, and he's now a supporter of the organization that makes the tiny homes, like the one that he lived in. And he says that when he showed up that first day, he thought that all he needed was a house. But what he found out was that what he needed was a community. Community heals us. Community holds us. I love hearing why people came to St. Clare's. What brought you here the first time and what made you come back. And I'm always interested in what made people visit the very first time. And there are many stories as there are people here, right? There's some connection to being an Episcopalian. Maybe it was the location. Or maybe somebody approached you and invited you and told you about St. Clare's, which, by the way, is the most common way people come to a church for the first time. While the reasons to try St. Clare's for the first time varied, the reasons for coming back were much more uniform. The answer I heard most or hear most is the people, the personal feel, the community. The second most common answer was Patty's sermons. All I have to say, if you're watching this, thanks a lot, Patty. She sort of set me up with that one. But what keeps bringing us back is the community. It's belonging. It's about having a place where you feel valued and knowing that you make a difference. And this is how we live the gospel. We do what Jesus did. We invite more people to be a part of this community. We do what the people of the tiny village did. We take responsibility for each other. We check in on each other. And we encourage each other to find our best selves. We serve the people that live around us. And as we continue to grow and to serve, let us remember that at the heart of our faith is the call to build and nurture community. And together we can create a place where everyone feels like they belong and where lives are transformed by the love of God. And so just as Jesus sent out his disciples to heal and to bring people into the community, let us go forth from this place with the same mission, to be agents of God's healing, inclusion, and love in the world.